Good morning and welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. I am Linda Doyle, a member of our church and chairperson of our Social Justice Council. Whether this is your first time or with us or your 1001 time, know that you are welcome here and that we are glad to have you. We are glad to provide this forum online to find comfort and recommit ourselves to the mission of supporting one another in our spiritual journeys, working for justice, caring for the earth, and building the common good. We gather to recommit ourselves to dismantling systems of oppression and injustice. It is good to be together. Over this past year and a half, Mark McQuat and Pete Bloom, with assistance from Rebecca Young Marquardt, have put together a proposal for a half-time director of our social justice ministry. With support from our board of trustees, they have been developing a task force to consider how to fund this position and bring it to our congregation for consideration. We believe when this position is filled by a person with demonstrated experience and talent, we could then develop an excellent social justice ministry capable of fulfilling our heartfelt mission to strengthen our commitment to social, economic, and environmental justice. Following this service, we invite you to participate in a Zoom conversation about this proposal with encouragement to join our task force. At the end of the service, Linda Burke will tell you to enter breakout room number 1. And lastly, please continue to look to your emails, phones, and the website for continued updates about worship and other church happenings as we continue to monitor this pandemic and decide what is the safest way for us to worship. And know if you are ever in need, please let us know. I invite you now to take a deep breath with me as we enter into this time of worship.
Good morning. I'm Al Robert, Chair of the Finance Committee. Last week, in the run-up to our Stewardship Drive, Catherine Tobin spoke about the growing expenses we will face next year and the importance of our stewardship commitments in helping to meet those expenses. My job today is to show the numbers for both the expenses and the revenue needed to cover them. So here are some numbers. The left column here shows revenues and expenses in church year 2018-19. The last full year of church operations before we had to curtail our in-person gatherings due to COVID. The middle column shows 2020-2021, when we were under the pandemic restrictions for the entire year. The right-hand column is our preliminary estimate for next year, presumably after we have fully emerged from COVID isolating and distancing. It's a little difficult to see the trends in the numbers, so let me show you the same information in graphic form. Here are revenues for those same 3 years. Our stewardship and other contributions, represented by the blue and orange segments in the graph, held up pretty well during the pandemic. Our transfers from the endowment fund to the operating fund, the yellow bands in the bars, increased during COVID thanks to a generous bequest received shortly before then. More on that from Joan Dara in a minute or two. The big dent in the budget during the pandemic was our decline in our rental income, as shown in the gray bands. Next year, we expect rental income to rebound, but not yet to the pre-COVID level, and we will be able to count on other suspended fundraising efforts, such as the book sale. But even considering these rebounds, to meet our increased expenses, we anticipate the need for about a 10% increase in stewardship contributions. Let's look at the expenses. The green segments of these bars indicate staff costs. The graph shows that during the pandemic, we protected the compensation of our staff. Going forward into next year, a cost of living increase of about 6% will be needed to keep pace with inflation, and we will need to add a part-time custodian to the staff. That increase is noticeable in the graph, but the biggest increase will be in other expenses, represented by the blue segments in the graph, which will increase from pre-COVID levels and then some. We will see increases in worship, music, and religious education expenses, utility usage, facility maintenance, and the not insignificant cost of a ministerial search process. So in the coming weeks, it's time for all of us to sharpen our pencils, review our household budgets, and arrive at a stewardship commitment that is right for both our budgets and the church's budget. And now a word from Joan regarding the endowment fund.
Good morning. I'm Joan Dara, a longtime member of the Mount Vernon Unitarian Church and the current chair of our endowment fund. Al Robert just gave an excellent overview of our budget, talked about all the various things that we're about to do and why we need money to do these things. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes of your time to just do a little deeper dive into the endowment. So the purpose of an endowment fund, generally speaking, and in our case, is to ensure that our church and our liberal spiritual values will endure long after many of us are gone. Quick overview of our endowment. As you can see, we have over $2.6 million. Most of this is invested in the UUA Common Endowment Fund, which is where most UU churches have their endowments. The good thing about this is it is sensitive to socially responsible investing, so they invest in things that are in keeping with our values. Have to do a quick shout out to our Legacy Circle members. These are people who have put the Mount Vernon Unitarian Church in their estate or their will and will be giving a gift to us once they pass on. If you want any more info on that, please don't hesitate to give me a holler. So one of the challenges with our endowment fund and all endowment funds, frankly, is to find the right balance between spending money now and preserving for the future. I think we've got a good balance, and this is just a quick graphic to show you an overview of the spending now part of this. As Al showed you, every year since 2014, we've had a fair percentage of our endowment fund being used to balance our budget. We've also done a couple of extra things with the endowment to include, we helped to retire the debt in 2018. This was the debt that we incurred for the expansion of the commons. We also used a fair amount of endowment money to build our fabulous new parking lot. So Catherine Tobin and then Al Robert both have talked about all the good things we're doing and the challenge to balance our budget for FY 22 and 23. Most of us believe that the amount of money that we're paying from the endowment is just about right. So what we're focusing on is increasing our pledges. Never wanting to ask people to do something that we haven't done. This morning, Lynn and I looked at our pledge, and we have in fact made a significant increase in our pledge for next year. Hope that you can all do that. So thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this wonderful church. And I so look forward to seeing you all again soon in person.
As I was thinking about the lighting of our chalice and its flame of hope, I began to think of my dear friend Saul Barron. Saul was one of the founders of our church. He was the chairperson of our board of trustees. He was a wise and loving man. He was a spiritual inspiration to me and to many. And some considered him the rabbi of our congregation. One day I was driving Saul home after a meeting, and I was telling him how discouraged I was by how the meeting had gone. And Saul said to me, Pete, when you feel like that, just say, oy vey, oy vey, oy vey. Glass half full. And so whenever I feel discouraged about the state of our country or the world, I hear Saul's voice saying, Pete, just say oy vey, oy vey, oy vey, glass half full. And when I do that, I smile inside and I begin to think that I and we together can make a real difference. And I feel hopeful again. And I really believe that we all can, one way or another, find a flame of hope, feel hopeful, and make a difference.
Would you turn in your gray hymnals, please, to number 16, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple." After the introduction, we'll sing through it twice. "'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
I invite you to join us as we unite our voices to speak aloud the covenant of our community. The words are both displayed upon your screen and known within our hearts. Love is the teaching of this church, the quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all.
Change Sings, a children's anthem. Words by Amanda Gorman. Pictures by Lauren Long. Change sings. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tried and true dreamers. I'm a chant that rises and rings. There is hope where my change sings. Though some don't understand it, those windmills of mysteries, I sing with all the planet and its hills of histories. I hum with 100 hearts, each of us lifting a hand. I use my strengths and my smarts, take a knee to make a stand. I'm bright as the light each day brings. There is love where my change sings. I show others tolerance, though it might take some courage. I don't make a taller fence, but fight to build a better bridge. I talk not only of distances, from where and how we came. I also walk our differences to show we are the same. I am a movement that roars and springs. There's a wave where my change sings. Change sings where? There, inside me, because I'm the change I want to see. As I grow, it grows like seeds. I am just what the world needs. I'm the voice where freedom rings. You're the love your bright heart brings. We are the waves starting to spring, for we are the change we sing. We're what the world is becoming, and we know it won't be long. We all hear change strumming. Won't you sing along? I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along.
Mount Vernon Unitarian Church continues to share the plate with committed organizations that you, our members, have chosen. During the month of March, our offering is being shared with MVUC's Partner Church program. I'm Lisa Blair, the chair of MVUC's Partner Church Committee. For more than 25 years, North American Unitarian churches have established relationships with Unitarian churches in other parts of the world to foster understanding, provide spiritual support for one another, and help Unitarianism grow and prosper across the world. MVUC has 2 partner churches. For more than 20 years, we've been partnered with Zentharamshag in Transylvania, and for more than 10 years with the Unitarian Church of Maulat in the Khasi Hills of India. Our partner church committee has really missed the opportunity to fundraise in our usual ways with brunches and dinners, which have given us the opportunity to break bread together and learn more about our partners. We have also missed traveling together to visit our partners in the places that they live, where they've welcomed us into their homes and lives. We really hope to get back to that joy someday soon. In the meantime, Share the Plate is our main way to fundraise to support our partners' programs. We hope to use your generous support to help our congregation in Zentharamshag continue their renovations to the parish house and church building. This work has stopped and started multiple times during COVID. We'd like to continue our financial support to our partner church minister, Tivadar Hegedus, in the form of a stipend, which helps him finance various things for the church and the community, in addition to the small salary he receives and the tithing from the community. In Malat, we continue to support the church in their needs, as well as supporting the school that they run for children of all faiths. We should share the support of the school with the Akatink Unitarian Church. Your generosity helps the school give the children the uniforms that they need, books, supplies, and also to offer the teachers stipends, as often the teachers are sharing their salaries, where all of them are not covered by the Indian government. Finally, we are supporting our students with scholarships in Zenharamshag. This is a person-to-person program that enables students to continue their education with trade school, high school, and university financial support. While high school is compulsory in Romania, in our small village, there is not a school for higher learning. So students have to travel and board in other towns and have costs associated with this. If you wish to be matched with a student, please let me know, and we have many students with this need. We are a community that invites spiritual and material generosity from our members and friends. I give to support my spiritual home and all the important causes we are connected to. I invite this gathered community to offer whatever you are most comfortable with in spirit and financial generosity for the mission of our church community. If you'd like to write and mail a check for the offering, please make it out to MVUC, and in the memo line, indicate how you would like it to be used. You can also follow the link on the screen in the chat box to make a one-time or recurring payment. We are so grateful for your donation.
The Prophetic Imperative by Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Richard Gilbert. An excellent social justice program is a force for love and justice in the community, nation, and the world, accountable to the communities most impacted by oppressions of many kinds, This work is made sacred by our shared lives and yearnings, the higher purposes of our lives. Reverend Gilbert continued, I contend that the Unitarian Universalist movement lives under a prophetic imperative, a religious mandate for the corporate address of the church to the systemic problems of the culture in which it lives. Imperative has to do with a compulsion of conscience, personal and corporate, a sense of urgency to live out the ethical implications of religious faith. Reverence for life is the ordering principle for religious social ethic, for a liberal religious social ethic. Reverence for life gives rise to a moral imperative to expand the quality of life through pursuit of love in interpersonal relationships, justice in social relationships, and trusteeship in our relationship with the natural environment.
Would you turn in your gray hymnals, please, to number 95, There is More Love Somewhere. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these vibes. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these vibes. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.
Our invited guest this morning is the Reverend Rob Keithan, the social justice minister for All Souls Church Unitarian in Washington, D.C. In his role there, he supports the church's many issue groups, works to bring effectiveness and spiritual depth to the social justice ministry overall, and helps to lead the church's efforts to challenge racism and white supremacy. Beyond All Souls, Reverend Keithan serves as a consultant specializing in counter-oppressive transformation, congregational social justice programs, and long-term cultural change related to reproductive health, rights, and justice. He lives with his wife and their 2 daughters in Washington. Reverend Keithan was most kind and helpful in consulting with Mark Marquardt and me a year ago as we were developing our proposal for a half-time director of our social justice ministry.
Hello, Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. I'm sorry that we can't be together in person this morning, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you on video. I joined you as a preacher once before in January of 2013, but my first visit to your lovely congregation was likely 1993 for a high school youth conference. So though it's not frequent, we are in a long-term relationship. Anyhow, it's nice to be back. In the description for today's service, I set up some key questions about what we're trying to do in our social justice ministries. It starts with a basic recognition. which is that Unitarian Universalists and UU congregations have done a great deal over the years to promote justice locally, nationally, and even internationally. Our bottom line is clear. We want to have a positive impact. Social justice is one of the things our congregations are most known for in our communities, and it is consistently at or near the top of the list for why people hear about us in the first place and get interested in joining. Beyond this general desire to make an impact, however, there are many choices about how to focus our limited time, energy, and resources. And in particular, what we can do to ensure that our work is rewarding, effective, and perhaps most importantly, sustainable. So let me offer 3 perspectives to get this conversation going. The first is about our overall calling right now as a Unitarian Universalist religious community. It's no understatement to say that we're at an absolutely critical time in history. This is true for the world in general, and I expect that we are all gravely concerned with what is happening in Ukraine. But for today's focus, I'm thinking in particular about the United States. And for just a little personal and historical context, I'm from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I was raised in the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg, and my parents are still active members there. As a kid, I took many trips to the Gettysburg battlefield. And there's a physical place there on what's known as Cemetery Ridge called the high water mark of the Confederacy. It marks the furthest point reached by Confederate forces during Pickett's charge on July 3rd, 1863. Although the current national struggle won't be marked with a physical location, I think it's fair to wonder where the high watermark of the current Confederacy, in other words, the latest incarnation of colonialism and white supremacy, will be. People committed to preserving racism, sexism, and Christian extremism at any cost, including the cost of our democracy itself, are fighting as hard as they can with considerable success. Now, personally, I would love to think that Trump's presidency was the high watermark, that it couldn't possibly get that worse again, but both my intellect and my gut caution me not to rest idly in that hope. With the conservative majority on the Supreme Court, the censorship of teaching actual facts and history related to racism, the obsession with making abortion illegal, and so much more, it is not a time for anyone with progressive, liberal, or even moderate values to rest. Too much hangs in the balance. Our religious ancestors set themselves apart by choosing to worship a God of love rather than a God of judgment, by affirming the value and worth of all people, not the depravity of all people. Were they always on the side of justice? Of course not. But some of our forebears were passionate leaders in the fight against slavery, in the struggle for women's suffrage, in the civil rights movement, work for LGBT equality, and more. And now we are called to both build on that positive legacy and be honest and humble about the ways we have fallen short, and in particular, the ways we have failed to address racism and oppression within our congregations and within ourselves. I believe that the challenge of our time, the calling of our time, is to build equitable, multicultural congregations and an equitable, multicultural society. And we cannot do this by relying on pride in a selected collection of past actions. We need to show up with the information we have now, both about what's wrong and about how to work for solutions in ways that don't just replicate white supremacy culture and power differences, but rather create new collaborations and new approaches that center and support leadership from the margins. So what does that look like? Here's the second perspective I want to offer. My sense is that in a given year, perhaps 20 to 30% of people in an average UU congregation will participate in at least one action of the social justice ministry. The number of people who are consistently active in the social justice ministry, meaning that they're regular contributing members of an action group, is probably less than 10% of the congregation as a whole. This means that the vast majority of people in UU congregations, perhaps 70 to 90%, are only going to impact justice outside of the congregation. So the congregation can have a much larger impact on justice overall if it can help develop the knowledge, skills, commitment, and courage of this group. This brings me to the third observation, which is very much related. It comes from an article entitled, "What is the Mission of Missions?" by professional church consultant and author Dan Hotchkiss. He writes this: "Why do they do it? In budgeting and planning for this work, most congregations say their mission is to help others. That's a good answer. For many congregations, though, a better answer is to say the purpose of social ministry is instead to change the lives of its own members. The mission of a hospital is to heal the sick. I'm suggesting that for many congregations, a better analogy would be a medical school whose mission is to train doctors and nurses. Medical schools and their associated teaching hospitals treat lots of patients. You can't train doctors without giving them a chance to practice. The purpose of the medical professions is to heal. The purpose of the school, though, is not to heal, but to create healers." So where do we go with this? What are we even trying to do? I think Hotchkiss makes a good point, but I don't see it as either or. I see it as both and. The church should ground and mobilize people for action in their individual spheres, and it should take actions as an institution. For most UU congregations, including All Souls, where I serve, and I suspect for you at Mount Vernon as well, implementing the above conclusions requires, or at least invites, some shifts in approach. When we acknowledge that most of our folks are doing their justice work, if they're doing it at all, somewhere outside of the congregation, it begs an obvious question. How are we preparing, inspiring, and supporting people to do that? If this hasn't been a clear goal previously, what does it look like to make it a clear goal? If the social justice work has been mostly or entirely focused on particular issues and actions, what does it look like to shift emphasis towards training? How can a congregation help train people to be healers in their spheres of influence beyond the congregation? At All Souls, people involved in our racial justice work, our adult spiritual development, our leadership development, and our social justice ministries are coming together on the idea of a core curriculum for spiritually grounded, counter-oppressive activism and leadership that's relevant both within and beyond the congregation. Rather than one-off classes and trainings, we're looking at offering some of the same trainings again and again, year after year, so that every new person who connects to our congregation can benefit. And the more folks have a shared experience, shared frame of reference and language, the more progress we can make on both internal and external transformation. Now, this all said, I do still believe that it's imperative for congregations to take actions as a congregation. Our reading today quoted Reverend Dick Gilbert, who said, quote, "I contend that the Unitarian Universalist movement lives under a prophetic imperative, a religious mandate for the corporate address of the church to the systemic problems of the culture in which it lives." There are many reasons for this, but here's my take on the most simple and important one. We have an imperative to act as an institution because as an institution, we have the power to make a real difference. Clergy and congregants working and acting together on behalf of the congregation, especially when done in coalition with other congregations and organizations, has and can have a concrete impact on changing policy and culture. With our words, with our labor, with our money, with our buildings, sometimes with our out front leadership, and sometimes with behind the scenes solidarity, Unitarian Universalist congregations can absolutely be forces for justice and liberation in our communities. And when that's aggregated, we can have an impact nationally as well. In 2021, the National UU the Vote campaign set a goal of mobilizing UUs to contact 1 million voters. In the end, we contacted more than 3 million. The video of We Shall Be Known you saw just now was created for that effort. But let me say loud and clear that we cannot have a real impact on a gazillion issues at once. There has to be focus in a few areas. And the reality is that the most impact happens when church staff and lay people are working closely together. When the breadth of skills and energy among lay people combines with the consistency and resources of a staff person, it maximizes the impact. Let me close with a final observation and hope for where we are now in our nation and our faith communities. As we continue to negotiate the threats and impacts of COVID, we're going to be resuming more and more in-person activities. But we have to admit that it's not going to feel exactly the same or be exactly the same as before. We live in a changed world, and our congregations have to change as well. Long even before the pandemic began, congregations were recognizing that to stay relevant and to become multicultural, we needed to abandon one-size-fits-all ways of doing church and instead create more accessible and flexible ways of doing things and being together. The pandemic has simply made this exponentially more true. And so it's a perfect time to reconsider the approaches we're taking to our social justice work. And if alongside the importance and power of having an impact as a congregation, we recognize the importance of preparing, inspiring, and supporting people to be agents of change in their own lives, then we might very well have an impact that is rewarding, effective, and sustainable, and true to the calling of our faith. May it be so. Amen.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'd like you to turn in your gray hymnals to hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. the Spirit harvests the power, our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour, our trials in light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Please join together as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again.
When I started writing the word benediction, my brain somehow morphed it into dedication, which I decided that I'd like, because it makes sense to end a worship with a dedication to the work. So here is our benededication. May we honor the groundbreaking commitment of our ancestors by taking up the work that is ours to do now. And regardless of where or how we choose to live out the calling of our faith, may we dedicate ourselves to doing so grounded in spirit, motivated by love, and with a fierce passion for the liberation of all people. Amen.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only lonely sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Oh, imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.